Good day everyone. I'm sure many of you thought today's video would never come. Well, joke's on you, because here it is. This is the Dell Inspiron 530 computer that I picked up last year from the e-waste pile. This computer was one of many computers that I got from there, and I'm still only like a tenth of the way through showing all of them. This is the newest computer I got from the pile. And you saw the video, if you watched it, where I did test this computer right after I got it. I had never turned it on, I didn't do any work inside it, I just plugged it in, and it turns out that this computer worked absolutely perfect. The only thing which was wrong with it, which I easily fixed, and this was probably the reason it was disposed of to start with, was the power button has a loose wire on it, and it wouldn't turn on when you push the power button. Well, I just wiggled the wire a bit and the power button works now. And I almost bet that was the reason this thing was thrown away. They thought whoever owned it thought it didn't work anymore. So this computer was made in 2008. It was a low-end desktop offering from Dell. Like a lot of Dell's low-end to mid-range desktops and laptops at the time, this does have a nice array of media-oriented features, which we'll look at. This computer originally shipped with a single-core Intel Celeron 420 Blazeit. I forget the speed, but it was 1.6 or 1.7 gigahertz. It came with, I think, 1 gigabyte of RAM. And this did originally ship with Windows Vista Home Basic, but whoever owned it had it downgraded to Windows XP. So, by today's standards, you know, an extremely mediocre computer, 1 point whatever gigahertz single core Celeron from 2008, just not going to cut it these days. 1 gigabyte of RAM, definitely not going to cut it. Windows XP, still fine, as well as Vista, but not really preferred in today's world. Well, here's the awesome news. I have very significantly upgraded this computer. This computer is nothing like it was when I originally got it, and actually, this is now the best and most powerful computer that I have ever owned. What did I upgrade with this? Well, first of all, I changed the processor out for an Intel Core 2 Duo E8500. It is a 3.1 gigahertz dual-core processor. It's the second fastest processor this computer can accept. The only faster one is the E8600, which runs at 3.3 gigahertz, which I would have preferred to have gotten, but I got the processor on eBay. It was either an E8600 for I think like 25 bucks or the E8500 for 10 bucks. So half the price for only like 150 megahertz less speed. Heck yeah, I'll go for that. Quite a value. So yes, 3.1, it's actually 3.16 gigahertz Core 2 Duo in this thing. By and large, the most processing power I've ever had in a computer. This has about 5 times the processing power of the original Celeron. It has 3 times the processing power of my ThinkPad. Very, very significant. This thing's very powerful. In fact, it benchmarks about the same as a current desktop Intel Celeron. So by today's standards, the processor in this computer does still hold weight, and that's pretty nice. RAM. My friend Brandon very generously gave me 8 gigabytes of PC 6400 DDR2 RAM. So this thing is 8 gigabytes of RAM now, and there's a lot of people who ask, you know, looking at forums and stuff, they're not sure if the Inspiron 530 will accept 8 gigs of RAM. Yes, it does. And I have 8 gigs in there now. Gaming RAM, PC 6400 is not a normal DDR2 RAM speed. It was a specialty. It was a speed so fast it was only ever implemented on specialty motherboards, gaming motherboards. This computer does not work up to that speed, so it actually runs the RAM at I think PC 250 something hundred speed. So it's not running the RAM at full speed, but that's actually a really good thing. And the reason that's a real good thing is because the RAM, being specialty gaming RAM, is actually I forget the voltage, I think 2.2 volt RAM. It's higher voltage than the normal DDR2 RAM voltage. So, but this computer, being just a normal computer, runs it at the RAM at the normal voltage. I think it's 1.8 volts. So normally, you stick 2.2 volt RAM on 1.8 volt motherboard, the RAM's either going to be very unstable or not work at all. Well, luckily, because this computer runs the RAM slower than it was designed for, it works just fine at the reduced voltage. I ran Prime 95, not a problem. This computer is rock solid. I've tested it, I've put just as much stress on it as I can, never falters. It is rock solid stable with that gaming RAM running at the lower voltage because it's running at the slower speed. So very good. As for a hard drive, this thing has a 80 gigabyte SATA hard drive in it, Western Digital hard drive. Not the original hard drive. I looked it up. I thought it was kind of small for a computer of this age, and I looked it up online. I actually looked up the Dell, what do they call this? Service tag. Yeah, the Dell service tag. This thing originally shipped with a 250 gigabyte hard drive. So that hard drive must have failed at some point, and it was replaced with a smaller one. Either that or someone took the hard drive out of a Windows XP machine and stuck it in this in order to downgrade this to Windows XP. Who knows? So yes, very significant upgrades to this thing, and I've done other upgrades as well, which I'll show when we look inside the computer. The optical drive that was in this, it was a SATA DVD RW drive. It was no good, did not work at all. The tray would open, it would accept a disk, it would spin up the disk, but that was it. Nothing would work. So I've actually replaced the optical drive with an IDE DVD RW drive, and you'll see how I've done that also when we look inside the computer. This bay is empty, and in here we have the card reader, which is very nice. This thing will accept just about any type of card. Compact flash and micro drives. This will accept a micro drive. I've used a micro drive in this. Smart media card, XD card, multimedia card, SD card, memory stick Pro, memory stick Pro Duo. Oh, it's awesome. This thing can take any memory card you could desire to use in it. Microphone and headphone ports. Sadly, no FireWire. It's got the knockout there, but it wasn't included, which is too bad. So if I ever want to put FireWire in this, I'll have to get a card and stick in it. And 4 USB ports on the front. Very nice. Here's the original stickers. Celeron, not anymore. Thank goodness. Windows Vista, not anymore either. I haven't mentioned yet. I installed Windows 7 Home Premium on this computer. Would it run Windows 10? Absolutely. I have no doubt that this thing could run Windows 10 with absolutely no issue. However, I've never used Windows 10, and I've hardly ever used Windows 8. So I'm kind of old-fashioned. I still use Windows 7, so I've put Windows 7 on this computer. So let's turn this thing around. I kept the original power supply in it. It was kind of nerving. I wasn't sure if that would be okay, you know, with the processor upgrade and the RAM and everything, but it handles just fine. Actually, the reason I was worried was because I originally thought this power supply was 150 watt, because it says it on the label of the power supply. In one spot it says 150 watt. Well, it turns out that's just for the 5 and 3.3 volt rails. The 12 volt rail is also 150 watts. So this is a 300 watt power supply. No problem for the equipment I put in it, I think. I've run this computer a lot since upgrading it. Never had a problem. Here's the onboard I/O. Legacy free, no serial port, no parallel port, no PS2 ports. I would have preferred PS2 ports, but oh well. We have the onboard video. It's Intel GMA something or other. 4 more USB ports. My goodness, 8 USB ports on this computer. Onboard Ethernet, I forget if it's 100 megabit or a gigabit, but very good. And a full array of audio ports. You have the standard microphone line out and line in. And then you have ports for stuff which I don't even know. I think one might be a subwoofer and one for a center speaker. I have no idea. I'm not educated on the higher end audio systems out there. And if we look down here, well, first of all, I stuck a Wi-Fi card in here. This is, I believe, the US Robotics Wi-Fi card that came in, I think, the Dell Dimension, or not Dell Dimension, Dell Optiplex GX150. I tried my D-Link card in this, and it just would not work with Windows 7. That D-Link Wi-Fi card I have that my friend Brandon gave me years ago, worst PCI Wi-Fi card I've ever seen. It's such garbage. This US Robotics card, which is also a PCI card, it's quite old, works just fine though. It's a 802.11g card. And right here, I've actually stuck an upgraded video card in this. You might remember last year, I got a couple of PCI Express video cards that the school was getting rid of. And I stuck the best of them in here. It's NVIDIA, GeForce, I forget what model it is. It's a 5700 GT or something like that. I completely forget. It's a 256 megabyte card. I do remember that. It's from around 2008. You get VGA, S-Video, and DVI. Very nice. So a big upgrade. Not a good video card by today's standards. My ThinkPad beats it out quite handily, but it is a big upgrade from the Intel onboard graphics. So we'll open this thing up. There's supposed to be 2 thumb screws. I lost the one down here. I don't know where it went. It's somewhere in this room. So God knows if I'll ever find it. But I'll take the one remaining one out here. Let's take a look inside. So I kept the stock cooler for that 3.1 gigahertz Core 2 Duo. I was a little bit worried. I didn't know if it would be adequate. Well, get this. Not only is it perfectly adequate, but when I run stress tests making the processor get as hot as it possibly can, the fan never leaves idle, which is amazing. It keeps the processor amazingly cool. I don't think I've ever seen the temperature go above 70 degrees Celsius, 65 or 70. That's and that's with the stress test. So that's amazing. What a nice cooler. Why do people upgrade Intel's coolers if they're so nice to begin with? There's the case fan. So the power supply was made by Delta, so it should be quite decent. I should at this point, mention, some people get really confused. The Dell Inspiron 530 actually came in 2 variants, and it makes a lot of people confused because, you know, people have commented on my first video of this saying, oh, you can upgrade to a Core 2 Quad. No, the ones that shipped with a Core 2 Quad can take a Core 2 Quad. All the other ones can't. The Inspiron 530 came in 2 versions. If you ordered one with a Core 2 Quad, it came with a motherboard specifically for the Core 2 Quad. Any other version you ordered with a Core 2 Duo or a Pentium or a Celeron, you got the other motherboard, which is not capable of accepting a Core 2 Quad. So I obviously got this version with the lesser motherboard that can't take a Core 2 Quad. The Core 2 Quad version also came with a better power supply. It was, I believe, 380 watts instead of 300. My DVD drive, IDE. This motherboard does not have IDE on it, so how am I using an IDE optical drive? Well, if you look down there, I actually have an IDE expansion card installed. I bought this card on eBay. It came from Russia. I paid like 15 bucks for it total, which is good. It is a Promise Technologies Ultra 133 TX2 ATA 133 expansion card. It's a PCI card, and it has 2 ATA 133 IDE ports on it, and this is a wonderful card. Beautiful card, great to add to a PC that doesn't have IDE on it. And yeah, this card works just fine with this optical drive. It's wonderful. The card has a boot ROM, so it detects upon post what drives are installed. So you can actually use this card to boot a hard drive or an optical drive before the operating system starts, and that's great. This card is fully functional in every way. and ATA 133. It's quite fast, which is nice as well, just as fast as motherboard I/O. There's the video card. It's got a fan on it. The video card fan's louder than the CPU fan and the case fan combined. And down there is the US Robotics 802.11g Wi-Fi card. Drive mounting, the hard drive mounting is kind of unconventional on this computer. It mounts on the sidewall here. Down here is the 80 gigabyte boot drive. And I've got another drive up here. What is this? Well, for Christmas, I bought myself off Newegg 2 Seagate 1 gigabyte SATA hard drives, and I use these for backup. I do not back up my YouTube videos and other things to DVD anymore. DVD is too small. I looked at a lot of options. I looked at tape backup. Tape backup is too expensive and unwieldy to use, not worth it in my opinion. I looked at Blu-ray burning. Again, way more expensive, and Blu-rays only hold like I think 50 gigabytes. Hard drives were the way to go, so that's what I decided to do. I bought 2 1 gigabyte hard drives, and basically how I do it is I have a fake RAID 1 configuration. I throw all the data on one drive and then take it out, slip the other drive in, and put the same data on that drive. So just a simple back and forth, keep the same data on both drives, and if one drive ever goes bad, I still have the data on the other drive. So yeah, very good. And I've put them to a little bit of use right so far. I have like 100 gigabytes of data stored on them. So right here you have the RAM. So it's four sticks of OCZ Fatality gaming RAM, PC2 6400 I believe, but it's run at whatever the fastest speed this is, 5100 or something like that. And I'd take the RAM out to show you, but here's the problem. This motherboard for some reason is extremely touchy. Literally, if you touch anything in here, it can completely keep the computer from working. I've had this thing, the RAM slots are especially sensitive. I've had this thing running, and if I so much as look at the RAM the wrong way, I'll get a blue screen of death. In actual terms, if I just like lightly touch the RAM while this computer's running, instant BSOD, it dumps the memory contents of the hard drive and then restarts Windows. It's really strange, this thing, you know. I don't think it's because the RAM's, you know, quite big. You can see 2 of the sticks have big heat sinks on them. I don't think it's for that reason, because if I remember right, the original 1 gigabyte of RAM, which was normal sticks with no heat sink on them, they were just the same way. You just touch it and you get a blue screen of death. So yeah, I'd take out the RAM, but I don't want to, because oftentimes if something gets touched and breaks, you know, the connection becomes intermittent, it's a huge pain in the butt, because I have to keep, the computer won't work anymore, and I have to keep taking the RAM out and putting it back in and trying over and over, turning on the computer, and I'll get the post beep that means there's a memory problem, and I have to try a dozen times taking the RAM out and putting it in before the computer will be satisfied with the connection and will work. The expansion cards are the same way. Sometimes I get, once in a while, this thing will refuse to boot. It'll get a post beep, and it'll turn out to be one of the expansion cards. I gotta take it out and put it in multiple times until the computer's satisfied with the connection. I don't know why it's like this. I've cleaned the contacts on all the slots and everything, and I don't know if there might be broken solder joints on these connectors. Maybe the whole motherboard has a really poor soldering job on it. I have no clue, but it's working right now, so I'm not going to touch anything. So, oh yeah, by the way, despite the motherboard having no IDE, it does have a floppy port. It's hidden back there somewhere. Makes no sense to me. No IDE, but it has a floppy port. So you could, the only place to stick a floppy drive is where the memory card reader is, but if I wanted to, and I don't want to, I could remove this memory card bay and stick a floppy drive in its place. The memory card bay plugs into an internal USB port on the motherboard, and that too is really, like, I don't know what's with this computer, and I've looked this up online, and it seems all Inspiron 530s are like this. Everything is just so darn touchy physically. The memory card bay is actually quite touchy as well. One time I was using it to read and write data from a micro drive, and all of a sudden the bay just quit working. It just completely disconnected from the computer electronically. Windows acted like it had been disconnected, like unplugged, as if it was plugged into a normal external USB port. And I restarted the computer and it wasn't there anymore, the card reader. It wouldn't show up in Device Manager or anything. It had just completely dropped off the face of the earth. And I looked it up online, and that too was a common problem with the Inspiron 530. And the solution was, apparently, for most people, was to just unplug it from the motherboard and plug it back in. Well, I had tried that and it didn't work. And then one day, days later, I turned on the computer and the card reader was there again. And it's been working ever since then. So it's so weird. The hardware in this computer is so touchy. That's the only way I can describe it. The card reader will drop off the face of the earth as if it's been disconnected. Stare at the RAM the wrong way and you'll get a blue screen of death, and the computer won't post. And once in a while the computer, if you touch the expansion cards, the computer won't post. So it's really weird. So I never touch anything inside this computer. I found that if you don't have to touch anything and you don't touch anything, the computer will be fine. It's when you touch stuff is when it doesn't like that, and then you have to try really hard to get it working again. But it's working just fine as of right now. Hopefully showing you guys inside this thing hasn't messed anything up. The front panel comes off. Oh, ooh, that's not very good. You just saw that on video. There's these 3 plastic tabs you gotta bend back to snap the front panel off. And I accidentally grabbed, I've never seen them act like that. Normally they're quite springy. But I grabbed this one and it just bent back like putty. Ooh, that's not very good. Yeah, not the greatest set. This was a cheap computer. It was a cheap computer. But it's mostly very good. So, you gotta take the front panel off to get drives out and the memory card reader out. So, there is, everything. And the front panel, just line it up with the 3 holes there and swing it shut like a door. And geez, this tab's messed up now. All the tabs are messed up now. Sheesh, I swear to God, this wasn't like this before I filmed this video. Well, I guess it's on. It's pretty darn loose now. I think the cover here will keep it on. We'll see. Yeah, so at least when you have the cover on, the front panel stays on. Well, I say let's turn this on. So I've got a Microsoft USB optical mouse. I've got my only USB keyboard, this A-Open keyboard from the early 2000s. And going to be using my TV for a monitor here, 720p. So I'll hook it up and then we'll come back. Alright, it's hooked up, so let's turn it on and hope it posts and boots. Yes, it will. Now, notice this Dell logo. I've actually updated the BIOS on this. Dell, as awesome as they are with all their computers with BIOS updates. Here's the boot ROM for the IDE card. It should come up with the optical drive. Yep, there it is. Ultra DMA2. Dell's awesome with all their computers with BIOS updates, and they released updates for this computer until I think 2010 or so. And this computer didn't have the latest BIOS when I got it, but I've since updated it to the latest BIOS, and they actually, the original BIOS had the old, the old Dell Post logo, just the classic dark blue Dell logo, but with newer BIOSes they actually changed it to the modern Dell logo with the circle around it, which is kind of interesting. Windows 7 automatically puts up this Dell background, and here's the background I put. Since we've logged on, I have no sound hooked up. And this computer is very fast. The bottleneck would be the hard drive. That would be the slowest part of this computer because it's a lot older hard drive than it originally would have shipped with. The hard drive is from 2005. It might not even be SATA 2, it might be a SATA 1 hard drive, I'm not sure. But we open it up here, here's the main hard drive, only 80 gigabytes, and Windows 7's quite large with all the updates now, so half the drive space is taken up. There's our optical drive. You see that works just fine. And one of my backup drives, I've named them Backup 1 and Backup 2, is here. I've currently used 109 gigabytes of space. Unedited video. This will have to be replaced because I've made quite a few of these videos now. And videos that I have already uploaded. Very nice. So if we look at the properties here, notice how fast this computer is, way faster than my laptop. Windows 7 Home Premium Service Pack 1, Core 2 Duo E8500, 3.16 GHz, 8 gigs of RAM. I'm running 64-bit. And go to the Windows Experience Index. And look at these stats. 6.6 for the processor, 6.8 for the RAM. Awesome. I think those two stats, I know the processor is way better than the ThinkPad, but I think the RAM's even a higher score than the ThinkPad, despite the ThinkPad being DDR3. Graphics is the bottleneck, 3.5. Gaming graphics, 5.3. So, you know, it's a good video card for 3D graphics, but video and 2D stuff is not quite as high. And the hard disk, 5.4. That'd be a lot better if I had a newer hard drive in it. So, very good stats overall. I've got Folding at Home installed. You've heard me talk about Folding at Home before. It's the program run by Stanford University, where it's a distributed computing platform. You, when you run Folding at Home on your computer, can use your computer's processing power to help Stanford University process data that helps them find cures for diseases such as Alzheimer's and some types of cancer. And I ran Folding at Home on this thing for a couple of months, and this thing is a folding beast with that 3.1 gigahertz dual core processor. This thing is a beast at Folding at Home. As something to compare to, several years ago I ran Folding at Home on a few of my older computers. I ran it on the iMac, I ran it on the Desk Pro, I ran it on the Dell Inspiron 1525, and I think I ran it on the Acer TravelMate 233LC. And those computers, I think I folded on them for a few months, and they racked up about 10,000 points in a few months. Well, this thing, I ran Folding at Home for 2 months, and it earned me 90,000 points in 2 months. It actually got 10,000 points, what a few of my older computers did in a few months. This thing did in a couple of weeks, which is amazing. Yeah, this thing's a beast at Folding at Home. Does it hold anything against a computer you can buy in a store today? Probably not, but compared to anything I've ever owned, this thing is crazy powerful, and I was amazed when I saw how well Folding at Home worked on it. I fold, whenever I run Folding at Home, which I don't often because I just do it for fun, but when I do, I fold on the YouTube Folding at Home team. Folding at Home has teams. YouTube user Ada Blasi, many years ago, like almost 10 years ago now, he made a YouTube folding team, a team specifically for YouTube producers and fans of his YouTube channel and stuff. When I last folded years ago, I worked my way up to, I think, like, you know, I was in the 70s or 80s place out of 300 some people on this team. Well, since the round of folding I did on this computer, I'm up to like 23rd place, which is pretty sweet. So anyway, I use Folding at Home and it works very nicely. The last thing I'm going to demonstrate on this, just to demonstrate the processing power of this thing, we're going to go to YouTube. Believe it or not, this thing will play with no issue a 4K video on YouTube. I'm not even kidding. So, let me go to YouTube here. YouTube.com. Thank you, Avast. And I'm just going to type 4K and search that. Let's try this one. So first, just to build up, I'll put it, it's already in 720p. So I'll show 720p here. So there it is, 720p, absolutely no jitter. Look at that, no problem whatsoever. 4K. Skip ahead a bit. 720p, no issue. My laptop just barely tolerates a 720p video. Sometimes it's watchable depending on what the video is of. If there's too much motion, my laptop can't handle 720p. This thing, not an issue. Well, let's go to 1080p, and hopefully I don't make a liar out of myself here. Gotta wait for it to buffer here. The internet here is not the fastest, so now we're in 1080p. Still doing just fine. I would say that little animation right there is quite intensive to process. Not a problem. Okay, let's go 1440p. Fine. And play, we're in 1440p. Would this be harder to do if I was actually running a monitor that could handle the resolution? I don't know. But I do know that it gets more processor intensive regardless of if your monitor can actually handle the resolution, because the computer still has to decode it and then downscale it to the resolution. So 1440p, not an issue. I can move the mouse around, it's not doing anything. Let me exit full screen mode, and I'm scrolling up and down while this video is playing. Okay, let me go back to full screen, and we'll switch to 4K. Go back to the beginning, and wait for it to buffer. Okay, 4K video. It's not full frame rate. It's struggling a bit, but it is playing mostly fine. Oh, it's actually caught up. Mostly. Stutters a little bit, but it's doing mostly alright. Actually, I know buffering. Oh, it's actually still buffering. Oh, I bet that's why it's stuttering. Okay, let me wait for it to buffer and then we'll try again, because I know buffering also uses processing power. I guess it only buffers part of the way depending on the resolution of the video, so we'll try it and see if it plays smoothly. Ah, that's much better. Still not perfect, especially when it gets to that part. But definitely watchable. Yeah, very little problem. It's not run as good as as the first time I tried it. I thought it played a 4K video perfectly smoothly, but it's almost doing a perfect job here. So not bad at all. I mean, 1440p, zero issues. So I'd say that's pretty darn good out of an 8-year-old computer. So that's all I'm going to bother showing you guys. We'll shut her down. Now the question is, what to use this thing for? I don't use desktop computers. I only use laptops normally, just because, you know, they're small and I can take them around with me and I don't have to stay in one place and stuff like that. I wonder how good of a video editing machine this might be. doesn't have much graphics power compared to my laptop, but it's got way more processing power, so the question would be, which is more important when editing video? But it's worth considering anyway. Down the road, I think my laptop's still perfectly adequate right now. Well, apparently this thing's not going to shut down, because I've had the camera shut off for about 10 minutes, and it's still sitting here at the log off phase. Well, I think it might or might not be stuck. So I'll leave it here, and I'll end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video about this very nice computer, now the most powerful computer I have ever owned. I'm sorry it took so long to get this video out, but I hope it was worth the wait. So, thank you very much again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.